I'm Tom Vasel. Welcome to Lookback. This is a series that I put out where I take a look at games that I reviewed 1, 5, and 10 years ago, and just kind of give you an update on what I'm thinking about these games at this point in time. So we'll start with a year ago. A year ago I reviewed Thieves, which is an abstract strategy game that you roll dice determining how your pieces move. It is just awful. Some people came in and said they liked it, but I don't see any redeeming values to this game. Bears and Barrels. You roll these barrel type things. It's a really one-note thing. I can't really recommend it as a game. The Little Monster That Came for Lunch and Stayed for Dinner. It's a little racing game. Probably oriented towards kids, but can work with kids and adults. The artwork itself is very cute. It's okay. Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid. I keep wondering if this one will drop to a 6.5, and then I wonder how much of that is the fact that I just dislike the Power Rangers. Not that I guess I dislike's a strong word, but I just don't care about them. I miss them growing up. I look at their stuff now and I think how stupid it is. But this is a straight up cooperative game, which is fine. The miniatures are okay. There's a lot of expansions and stuff for it, and I know some people like it a lot. And it was a good cooperative game. I just wonder, when I come back to this in 5 years, if this will have stood the test of time. We'll see. Caravan. This is not a very beautiful game, but it's a solid game from Rio Grande in which you're moving camels and delivering goods, which sounds like a lot of other games. But this is an interesting one because you move them along chains of camels, and there's some really, it's really kind of a train game, but it's really well done. Queen of Hansa. This is another game with, I don't even know what the Queen of Hansa means, but this is a game about collecting cards and playing cards. It's a sort of game, and there's a lot of these games like Mombasa where you're collecting cards, and those cards can be worth points based on how cards were played. It's that style of game, but this one's done well, and it's a little bit deeper. It has a meatier game, but plays in a fairly short amount of time. Adventure Games Monochrome Incorporated. I love the first one, Dungeon. I loved that adventure game. I liked Monochrome a lot. Not as much as the Dungeon one, but still enough that I'm still enjoying this series. Basically a choose-your-own-adventure style game. Nickelodeon Splat Attack. This looked like I would dislike it. It's a run around and shoot other people or throw food at each other type game with all different kind of Nickelodeon characters. Really well done miniatures. It really plays well. There's some nice thinking there, and it has Tetris thrown in somehow. That sounds like it shouldn't work. If you watch a review, it really does come together in a very good game. Artemis Project, a solid Euro-style game in which you're building up in the Arctic, or Antarctic, I'm not sure which one, and you're building different buildings, but there's a dice placement, and the more that you put out, the more benefits it might give, or disadvantages. There's some really neat interaction between the players. And King's Dilemma. The only thing that bugs me about King's Dilemma is I wish I could play it again, because it's that solid of a legacy game. Maybe I will at some point where you play through this game and there's these different dilemmas that show up and you argue back and forth. The game itself is decent, but the storyline is fantastic. All right, 5 years ago, I took a look at Phase 10. Now, Phase 10 didn't come out 5 years ago, but I did a review of it. Phase 10 is an abomination of a game. Monopoly. I took a look at, not Monopoly, I'm sorry. I took a look at Star Wars Sorry. So 5 years ago, the new Star Wars movie came out, The Force Awakens. And so they had a bunch of Star Wars games that came out in September. And I went out and I got them all. And I played them all. So Star Wars Sorry, same as Sorry. Actually, I think it was worse than Sorry, if I remember correctly. Not very good. Star Wars Battleship. It's Battleship with Star Wars ships. Nah. My Fair Princess. This has actually nothing to do with Star Wars, but it's kind of a game in which you are training a princess and she's going out and accomplishing different goals. It really felt like a video game, train up your princess type thing, but it was not a great game, a worker placement game. Star Wars Guess Who? Yeah, there you go. Cacker La Loupe. This is those games with those little cockroach bugs, which were extremely popular 5 years ago. And Bugs in the Kitchen was a good game. This one, not quite as much, because it meant that they went up through this loop. But the loop thing didn't work very well. It didn't happen. It wasn't good enough, I think, for a game. Star Wars Monopoly. It's nicer looking than regular Monopoly, but that's about it. I still am not a big fan of Monopoly, so I can't really give this one a good rating. Sheep and Shepherd, not Star Wars. This is a two-player asymmetrical game where you're supposed to switch sides halfway through. One person is trying to keep the sheep in. It's an interesting game, but I don't think there's enough there for me to want to keep playing it. Star Wars Force Grab. This one you're grabbing different things based on what you see on cards. It's okay. It's a decent mass market game. Rise to Power. This is a game about, I honestly don't remember anything about it, so just go by my rating here. What is that game about? Looping Chewie. All right, this is one of the best of the Star Wars games that came out. This is like Looping Louie, except it's Chewbacca and a Millennium Falcon. Now, the problem with this game I found was that it was only 3 players. I liked the original one was 4 players. However, someone 3D printed me some pieces to take 2 Looping Chewie sets, put them together, and then you could have 6 players. That's really cool, and it works well. I'm not rating it based on that. It would probably go a little bit higher if I rated it on that, but it's still a lot of fun. It's a silly dexterity game that somehow works. Risk Star Wars. Now, I dropped this one a little bit, and I'll explain why. Risk Star Wars has nothing to do with Risk. It is essentially the end of Star Wars, or actually Return of the Jedi, and you are fighting back and forth. There's spaceships fighting back and forth. Then you have Han Solo and group trying to take out the shield generator, and Luke Skywalker fighting with Darth Vader. That's all really cool. It's very similar to Star Wars Queen's Gambit, but on a much, much lighter level. Because of that lighter level, I went back and played Star Wars Queen's Gambit, and I was like, yeah, you're right. That is a much better game. So I dig this one a bit because it reminded me of that, gave me that nostalgic feeling, but when I compare them, it's just not the same. However, this one's a lot easier to get a hold of, for sure, for a cheaper price. Rum and Bones. Rum and Bones, a pirate game, MOBA. I never even heard of MOBA games until I played Rum and Bones for the first time. But this is a solid, great miniature game, fun pirate game, but it is that MOBA back and forth style. Star Wars X-Wings Miniatures Force Awakens set. This was a rebooting of Star Wars to some degree, a new starter set for Force Awakens. I like it the same as I like all X-Wing fun. I don't keep up with everything that comes out for X-Wing, but this was a good one. Valley of the Kings. This is a great little deck builder. If you've never played Valley of the Kings, there was 3 different sets that came out, and then a deluxe set that included all 3 of those sets. Doesn't matter which one you get, they're all fun. A deck building game where you're going to bury some cards for points, and you have to do that actually, but then you take these good cards out of your deck. Really neat. And Pandemic Legacy Season 1, 5 years ago. Still think this is one of the greatest experiences of gaming in my life. Super fun. We just played Pandemic Legacy Season 0 this year, but Legacy 1, so good. All right, 10 years ago, I took a look at Sturgeon. Minion Games had burst onto the market with a bunch of games. Sturgeon was a really bad fishing game, unfortunately. Minion Games had a lot of games that just weren't that good. I also, 10 years ago, reviewed Dungeon Quest from Fantasy Flight Games. This was a reprinting of the original Dungeon Quest. I know a lot of people give me garbage on this review. I am still mind-boggled that people like a game where in all likelihood you're going to die. And it's pretty much luck whether you die or not. You go to a dungeon, you might get some gold, but you'll probably die. I just don't see the fun in that, but I know some people like it. Nile, this is another one of those minion games. I thought this one was okay 10 years ago. Looking back at it now, I wouldn't even probably give it the time of day. Dominion Alchemy. Now this is by far my lowest rated Dominion expansion. When this came out, I liked it more than I do now because it was all I had. Now that there's a plethora of expansions, this one is the weakest one. Introduced another currency, which sounded cool, except they never visited it again. So if you play with Alchemy, you have to play with a bunch of Alchemy cards. It has one of the worst cards in the game that lets someone else play a hand from your deck. And overall, I just find it to be very forgettable. I have almost no Alchemy cards in my big set of it, and I don't miss them. Sounds like a plan. This is a party game where you basically try to give people bad advice, and they pick the worst advice or best advice. Nah, it's okay. Samarkand. This is a Queen game from John Bauer that's essentially a train game, except it's not. It's very themeless. It's okay. To me, it's one of those just very forgettable games, although a lot of people really did enjoy it. I just was like, eh. Walkstar. It's hard to believe this is 10 years old now. This cooperative game about running a Chinese restaurant, and you're all working together to fill orders as fast as you can. This came out at the beginning of the huge amount of cooperative games are out now, but has a nice real-time aspect to it, which was copied by many other games. And it was the beginning of Tim Fowler's games. Ascension. This one went up for me. I didn't really like the artwork at all, but I thought the game was fine. I was comparing it to Dominion at the time, but now I look at it 10 years later, and I find that I played Ascension a lot. I have to raise my rating. Innovation. This one I dinged a bit. I still like Innovation a lot. I think it's really cool, especially with the expansion. I don't get to play this one a lot because it's very, very divisive. There's a lot of people who don't like it. Watch the Tom is Wrong video that came out a few weeks ago. But I still think it's an interesting idea. It's a lot of fun. It just doesn't get to the table as much as it used to, and I find myself slightly less intrigued about playing it. So that's the small ding in ratings. And Dominion Prosperity, no ding in rating here. This is my favorite expansion for Dominion. You know, here in Alchemy, I reviewed them in the same week. Dominion Prosperity is amazing. It adds more currency, more amazing cards that cost 7. There's very few of those in the game. If I could only buy one expansion, this would be it. Whew! That's a lot of games, but that's what I reviewed 1, 5, and 10 years ago. Thanks so much for watching Dice Tower. Until next time, I'm Tom Vasel, and this has been Lookback.